Hi there, I'm Anna with VSAC, and I'm here talking with Kristen Glick, who's going to tell us a little bit more about what she does for work. So, Kristen, I'll have you start. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what is your job?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Kristen Glick. I am a physician assistant at Mansfield Orthopaedics. We are a subset group of Copley. I'm one of the smaller hospitals in the area.
Thanks. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your job entails?
Sure. So, being a physician assistant in our group, essentially, we have three main job functions. We see our own patients in the office and do radiology evaluations and diagnosis and treatment. We also first assist in the operating room, which is personally, I think probably one of the most exciting parts of my job. I love that part. And, that means holding retractors and getting patients set up. And even, at the end of surgery, usually the surgeon will actually leave the room and we will be the ones who will close incisions and make sure the patients get off to the recovery area safely. And then the other huge component of my job right now is actually taking call too. So we take first call for the emergency room and for the practice itself. So that means weekends of taking patient phone calls about, post-operative questions or, reducing fractures in the emergency room. So there's a lot of different areas, which I think, I don't know, keeps things very interesting. I'm never bored. Let's put it that way. Always doing something different. So it's very cool.
That is really cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your education and career background and how you came into this kind of work?
Absolutely. So I actually am the first person in my family that went into healthcare. So it took me a while to honestly get to where I am today. I started off as a business undergrad and just really was not finding my way at all and switched to athletic training kind of on a whim. I actually just had a friend that was doing it and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of that before. So I went down that road and that's actually my undergraduate degree. So I have my bachelor's in that. And then I tried to get a job after college and I couldn't find one as an athletic trainer and ended up as a medical assistant and worked honestly for 3 years almost before going back to PA school, which I don't know, for me was, I think, the better way to do it. I felt like I was very motivated to go back to grad school and grad school isn't easy and PA school is certainly not either and requires a lot of, extra classes and everything too. So even though I wasn't directly, on a path to being a PA, I got there eventually. So
That's great. Thanks.
yeah.
What are some of your favorite things about your work?
So favorite things about my job is, I think everybody in healthcare has a really underlying sense of wanting to help people and being able to actually create change in somebody's life is pretty powerful. And I think, at least in our group, we have a lot of job satisfaction with that. And I think the great thing about orthopedics too is that you can actually physically help people, whether it's replacing a joint that's not serving them well or, fixing a fracture or reducing somebody in the emergency room. There's very, concrete results that we get and it's very, very satisfying. And, having patients come back after a bad injury and telling them or, having them tell you that you were there and you changed their life and you made them better, we might not be saving lives in orthopedics, but we certainly at least have a daily impact on people. And that's pretty great. So
That's great. Thanks. What are some of the things you find the most challenging about your work?
I think especially in orthopedics, our job is very unpredictable. And I think that also comes with being a provider. When I was a medical assistant, you had set hours, you got there at 9, you left at 5, kind of whether it was done or not. And being a provider, you basically stay now until the job is over. And sometimes that means, I don't get out of the operating room till 9 o'clock at night or, on a call weekend, I'm at the hospital all weekend and it can be very unpredictable. And I think that's the part at times that can be challenging. And it's important to really love what you do because even though, it may mean you're missing holidays or time with friends because you can't, commit to plans. It's, you're proud of what you do and that's more important than the rest of it. So
Thanks. That's great. And it sounds like that might be a good lead into the next question. There might not be a typical day necessarily for you, but can you walk us through what a day at work for you might look like?
Yeah, sure. So I'll walk you through kind of my two, and they're very different days, when one being in the operating room and one being a normal clinic day. So on an operating room day, I usually get in about 6:30, and we're kind of usually the first ones there, and we're prepping charts and making sure everything's in order for the surgical day ahead, that patients have their pre-op clearances, everything's all set to go. We're ordering prescriptions for people throughout the day, and then seeing patients, by 7:30 when they're ready to be seen. We're usually in the operating room starting by 8 o'clock. And sometimes in between all that, it's going to see patients that we have on the floor or dealing with, calls if you're on call from the ER or patient questions. And it's sort of kind of managing this chaotic balance between keeping our surgical schedule going for the day, and that usually means in our role, making sure that the patients are positioned and ready for the surgeon, operating right alongside them, during what can be very long days sometimes and long surgeries. And then in between getting quick breaks to kind of, eat and try to do some of that, but also, keeping up with, patient questions from the office. And, usually those days end up being like 10 to 12-hour work days, but they go by very, very quickly. So, that's certainly not a bad thing there. But on office days, my life becomes a little bit more predictable, which is nice. I usually get there, about half an hour before my day starts, and my patients start coming in at 8 o'clock, and I see people till about 4 o'clock. And then it's, ordering x-rays and trying to make sure that I'm triaging people appropriately, whether they're, non-operative candidates or operative candidates, and, seeing people, every 30 to 15 minutes, kind of depending on whether they're a new patient or not. But we have a lot of responsibility in our role, which is really great. But it definitely requires, long days sometimes. So.
Thanks.
Mhm.
What do you think would make someone a good fit for this kind of work?
I think, the most important thing, other than the stereotypical, like, oh, you've got to be a hard worker. Yeah, everybody knows that, you got to be able to get yourself through school and everything. But I think, especially in healthcare, if you're not able to be a strong team player, I think that's probably the most important part, because, I can't do my job from, whether it's the, front office staff that's scheduling appointments, to our surgical schedulers, to the, janitor staff that are cleaning, especially, during COVID times. I mean, everybody is so important to this role, and that you have to be able to work well with everyone and different personalities, and just figure out how, to do that so that we can serve our patient population and do it well. I think that's super important, and being compassionate too. You're going to meet patients from all different backgrounds and all different needs and expectations of you. And I think you need to be aware of, your role and effect in their lives, and so that you can deliver, safe, effective, care to everyone.
Thanks. And so if a middle or high school student is thinking this might be a job they're interested in someday, are there things you would recommend that they do now, like classes they should take or volunteer projects, or something they could do at home to kind of continue exploring it?
Definitely. I think, one of the big things is, honestly, just watching an interview like this, everything that I didn't do, basically, um, get as much experience as you can with like local hospitals, whether that's volunteering at a hospital, or if people have any connections with a local healthcare office or group, or if you have friends of friends that that have been through all this, reach out to them. And, everything is pretty heavy on the sciences as far as class. So, biology, chemistry, physics, all that are great things to, participate in. But I really think getting hands-on experience is the most important part, because it's really hard to know if you truly like it without being in it. And, a lot of schools weigh pretty heavily too on patient care experience. And that, is probably one of the most important things when you're looking at applying to, PA school after your undergrad, is making sure you have some of that. And, I think in life too, it's all about, who you know and the connections you make. And if you make those now, I mean, that's almost a guaranteed job when you get done, or at least a support system for you when you're practicing. I think it's super important. So,
Thanks. That's great.
mhm.
And you talked a little bit about your education background, but is there
Yeah.
anything else you would want to say that you would recommend to students about education they should be thinking about down the road to help succeed in this kind of work?
So I think that, I honestly sort of wish I had done like a pre-med or something like that, although I was able to get a lot of the core classes done in my degree that you needed for PA school. I still had to take some extra online, which, certainly isn't the end of the world, but, whether people want to go, PA or a nurse practitioner and you go to nursing school, I think, just try to do something that's pretty heavy on science so you can get a lot of those classes done so that you don't graduate with your undergrad degree and then you're having to still take a lot of classes before even applying if that's something that you want to do.
That's great. Thanks. Is there anything else you would want to share with students or any advice you would want to give?
I think, try to get out there as much as you can and make sure if you do go to grad school, do it in an area that you truly want to live in because I didn't do it that way. I'm a local Vermonter, but I went to South Carolina for PA school because there wasn't a program here and I quite honestly picked it on a fun location that I thought would be cool to live in for a while, knowing that I would probably come back and I made a lot of connections there and had a lot of job opportunities after school in South Carolina that I didn't end up taking because I moved back here, and I think I had a harder time finding a job too when I got back because of that. So I would recommend if you know you really want to live somewhere, try to coordinate all of your education in that area because the connections you make are last a lifetime. I still keep in touch with a lot of those people in South Carolina. They're great. So try to do that. I think it'll make your life a lot easier. So,
That's great. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
yeah, thank you so much.